together the food chains.
Hey all, welcome to a brand new video series I'm kicking off today. This one's called The Weekend Wrap-Up. What's the Weekend Wrap-Up, I hear you ask? Well, it's a video where I'll be taking a look at the films and television seasons that I've watched over the last week, having a talk about the scores that I gave the films themselves, as well as some of the technical specifications on the Blu-rays, UHDs, or streaming services that I watch the series and films on. Hopefully the video quality on this one's a little bit better as I'm using a real camera today, so if my cinematography is okay, let me know in the comments below. How about we kick this one off? So, Sunday night's watch, I don't think it's any surprise here, was Goldfinger. I'm deep in the middle of my Bondtober feature event for the month of October, and that's where I watch every single Bond film, right from Dr. No all the way through to Daniel Craig's latest. Now, I know you might be thinking, why are you starting this one so late, Adam? Well, unfortunately here in Australia, No Time to Die doesn't hit cinemas until November 11th. That's quite a ways off, so I've got to keep myself busy somehow, and I've got to make sure that I don't have the film spoilt. So this is a good way to do it. Goldfinger, not exactly a surprise, but it's Connery's best. It gets a 9 out of 10 from me, and the technical specifications of the disc are pretty good as well. Lowry's remaster of the original camera negative was scanned in 4K, and even though they like to use a little bit of noise reduction in their process, it looks pretty good in terms of detail. The audio, in particular, the iconic theme song, sounds great. The film itself is iconic for a number of reasons, from the introduction of the theme song, which wasn't something that was originally in Dr. No, as well as the fact that we get a great villain. We also get a memorable sidekick in the form of Oddjob, and then we've got tongues firmly planted in cheeks when we get character names like Pussy Galore. It's a fantastic film, easily Connery's best, and it was a great watch. Moving on Monday evening, it was my son's pick, and he's been on a bit of a horror binge lately. So for me, it was a rewatch of The Ring 2, but for my children, it was a first-time watch of the film. Now, I actually liked the US remake of the original Ring film. I think it was super effective. Everything from the cinematography to the editing to the audio, and even just the makeup design, as well as the visual effects. Really effective, worked well. Unfortunately for the sequel, they made an interesting choice and got the original director of the Japanese version to do the sequel, and I think something got lost in translation along the way, because it's quite a flat film, and when you're talking about horror, the last thing you want is people to be bored. This one was released by local distributor Shock Entertainment, and it came through their Cinema Cult label. Fortunately, although the film's a bit flat, the technical specs of the disc are quite good, and the video quality is excellent, and the audio is even better. It's a really impressive lossless audio mix. So even if you're a bit iffy on the film, it's definitely worth picking up just for the presentation of the film itself. So that was Monday. On Tuesday, I continued on with Bondtober, watching another entry from Connery, and this one was Thunderball. A lot of fun, but it's a little bit of a step down from Goldfinger, though that's to be expected considering that one's so good. I do really enjoy it. I get a lot of kicks out of the stunts and the fight choreography, and Connery's certainly really comfortable by this point in time in the role. He's got a great confidence. He's still charming, but there's a little bit more brutality and a little bit more smarm coming in when he's delivering the comedy, and it works really well. It's a good mix. In terms of the technical presentation, things even out a little bit. There's a slight dip down in the video quality. The audio's around the same, but it's still a great disc, and looks quite solid, especially considering the age. I moved on, continuing on with Bondtober and You Only Live Twice. This is the point where I think you start to see that Sean Connery gets a little bit tired of the role. It's certainly not bad by any means. As a matter of fact, there are several things that really elevate the film, and I think Barry's score has got to rate a mention there. The theme song in particular is absolutely iconic, and the string arrangement in it just sounds absolutely amazing. And the audio on the disc really improves that as well. So even though the film itself, whilst entertaining, is great, the technical specs of the disc actually elevate it. After that, we move away from Connery and we get George Lazenby's one and only entry as Bond, and this one's on Her Majesty's Secret Service. So by the back end of the 60s, Connery was bored with the role and wanted out, and so they pick an unknown underwear model from Australia, so local. Lazenby's pretty good, but he just doesn't quite have the charisma of Connery. Then again, not many do. He's solid though, and it's interesting because they take quite a few risks with the film. The tone is very different right from the get-go with the introduction of synths in the score. He breaks the fourth wall to deliver a line of comedy, and then things get a little bit more serious. The film's very long, at almost 2 hours and 20 minutes. It probably could have done with a trim. It's certainly not bad, and I'd say it's been unfairly criticised over the last 45 years or so, but it's not an amazing film. One thing that does pack a punch, though, is the ending. It's certainly the grittiest and the darkest ending to a Bond film, particularly in that era. And I think it has a lasting legacy in that it probably inspired elements in Dalton's and even Craig's tenure as Bond. So if you write off On Her Majesty's Secret Service because of Lazenby, think again. There are story threads and influences all the way through to the current day iteration of the franchise. And then last night's watch was Connery's return to Bond, Diamonds Are Forever. Now, this one unfortunately shows that even though he's got the magic when it comes to Bond, it's not the only thing that's the important ingredients to making a great film. And unfortunately, the script and the direction take a little bit of a step down. It is interesting, though, that the opening sequence is particularly gritty, with Bond being quite ruthless, and that's something that flowed through from On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and that's the type of thing I'm talking about when the legacy of that film is mentioned. Unfortunately, by the end of the film, you're left wondering whether it was all worth it, and I have to say that this one is one that Connery probably would have wished he didn't go back for. On the plus side, though, it held things away from Roger Moore for a little bit longer, and I have to say I'm not disappointed with that, but you'll hear more about that when I get to Roger Moore entries. And lastly, I wrap things up with a holdover from last month's feature event, Sorkin September. So, if you've been following me on Instagram, last month's feature event was me trying to watch every single thing that my favourite screenwriter, Aaron Sorkin, has written. And that includes every single film and 10 seasons of TV. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get to them all. I did all the films, and I did a solid whack of his TV, but I just couldn't wrap it up in time. So, the one holdover from The West Wing was his final season. And after the fourth season, he left the show. So the season itself takes a slight dip down, and you'd have to think that has to do with all the stuff going on in his personal life. But there's still an incredible quality to the series, and I think that's none more evident than in the finale. The final couple of episodes are absolutely astounding, with some incredible score, acting, and in particular the story elements are amazing and quite shocking for something on the West Wing. Sorkin doesn't like doing any cliffhanger type episodes, but he certainly threw everyone for a loop with this one. And I remember watching that for the first time many years ago and wondering how they were going to resolve the point that we ended at the end of season 4. So I'm going to be continuing on the West Wing, even though that was the end of Sorkin's entries, and I've still got Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, as well as the 3rd season of The Newsroom to do, and I'll be working on those this month as well. Of course, next week I'll be continuing with my Bondtober entries as I dive into Roger Moore. Wish me luck with that. We'll see how that goes. And in a good bit of news, Australia is finally coming out of lockdown, and as of tomorrow, cinemas are reopening in my local area. So I'm hoping to hit up the cinemas and perhaps catch a few films that I missed out on over the last 3 or 4 months. There have been quite a few released that I haven't seen, and so far I've managed to remain spoiler-free from those. So hopefully I'll be able to rectify that over the next week or two and play catch up on a few films if they get screenings locally. Anyway, that's it for the weekend wrap up for this week. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, throw me a like and subscribe, and I'll be back next week with another one of these. I'll catch you then.